It's the DigiGuys.
All right, Tim.
Hey.
We're trying a little bit something new, and a little bit of a new intro. Tim, actually, this is your music, right?
It is. I didn't know you were going to tell people that. I guess in another life I was a musician.
Yeah.
In bad punk bands and slightly better jazz bands. But
Yeah,
really
that's
a
all
lot
right.
of really bad punk bands. Yeah.
Email us at godsdigiguys.com. Let us know if you love it, or if you want Tim to dig into his.
Deep archives in every genre.
Yeah. So Mark is on a plane right now, I think, as we
Yeah.
speak, isn't he?
Yeah,
Or is he
which
in the
is-
airport? Anyway.
It's one or the other, that's for
Yeah.
sure. And it's a weird thing. Dude, I like sitting in for Mark. The notion of replacing Mark, that doesn't really actually make any sense. So I'm gonna think of myself as a long-term sitting in for Mark sort of situation.
Well, it's that.
I tried to, I told him what I wanted to do is to do little reports for us.
Yeah, for sure.
From Paris, with the iPhone there, just whip it out. Let us know about the culture, the movie culture, what's going on in Paris. Report back.
And as long as you said whip it out, that brings us to our lead news story of the week.
HW. Harvey.
I think as I commented on my Facebook page, the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills is probably right about now burning every bathrobe in that place.
Yeah. Because what are you gonna? Well, you had a very interesting sit-down interview with Harvey
Years ago.
Years.
It wasn't a sit down. It was a phoner.
A phoner.
It was a phoner.
A phoner
Yeah,
interview
years ago.
Years ago. And of course, this thing that we call an open secret.
Yeah.
And what you look. This has been a really tough situation. Not just for Harvey. Harvey has what he has coming.
Yeah.
Right. But for Hollywood itself, for the media, for all of us who've been involved in this business for a long time, and known about this open secret and other open secrets just like this one, and who failed to do anything about it for nigh on to 30 years now.
Yeah.
I think there's a reckoning coming for the whole system.
Well,
Harvey's going to get a reckoning. Yes, absolutely. I love what you said that Jeff Bridges said about that.
Yeah,
situation.
Jeff Bridges had a great quote. I mean, that's as soon as this breaks, every celebrity in Hollywood who has any kind of event where they are interfacing with the press is just thinking, "Oh, dear God, now what do I say?"
Yeah.
Because you have to say something. You can't say nothing because saying nothing is saying something. And that's the challenge, is that this thing breaks and you're going to be on the red carpet tonight and you thought you'd be saying something completely innocuous and insipid about, oh, well, I love this movie and here's my next movie coming out and I love my wife and my kids and hey, I want to give a shout out to Uncle Joe. And that's usually what it is. The red carpet is a thing, and you talk to each person for about 5 seconds. You've done them.
I do them. I still do them.
Yeah. And it's a Hollywood staple and it's routine. And then something like this happens and you're expected to have an opinion about something big. And about 50% of the time that stars get trapped on the red carpet and asked to have an opinion about something, if the publicist is not paying close enough attention to drag them away, they wind up putting their foot in their mouth and saying something stupid. So it's really tough. Even Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I'll circle back around, give you this long roundabout answer, but even Katzenberg, he made public the email he responded, because everyone saw that email that Harvey sent to all those executives begging them to help him keep his company. And Katzenberg has said publicly, I mean, this is Jeffrey Katzenberg, a guy with more media experience than, half the country. And he said he was stumped. He didn't even know how to reply. He just was shell-shocked by getting this email from Harvey. And he talked to some friends, and they said, you have to reply. And so Katzenberg composed a very thoughtful letter and sent it back to those same friends for feedback. This is a very smart executive. And they all said, send it exactly as is. And it was basically saying, Harvey, you're a friend, but you've done horrible things to other people and you have to atone for it. But when you are ready and willing to redeem yourself, I will be there as a friend to help you understand what you need to do to make amends. It was incredibly grown up. I mean, it was it just and my respect for Katzenberg has always been very high. And he sent me a very nice letter once too, which he didn't have to do. And then Jeff Bridges gets, trapped on the red carpet, and he says, he's facing his demons right now, and I hope he leans into them and comes out a better person on the other side.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's sort of what I think everybody feels, and that's not forestalling justice. I wrote a piece on cinegods.com. We've launched the site.
Yeah.
Ray has been our beat reporter on Harvey Weinstein. Ray has gone nuts on this thing.
Created a timeline.
He worked so hard. It's the perfect timeline. I mean, it's all right there. If you want to see the timeline of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing from going back years right up to now, it's there. Ray has curated it on cinegods.com. And then I wrote an editorial that I just had to get out, which is basically saying that this is a systemic thing. It's why this is the biggest scandal in Hollywood history, because it's not just about Harvey. It's about the system, and it's about how incredibly unprofessional this business can be. We were just having a conversation with somebody earlier who was telling us stories, and you can't name names because you get sued. That's what Corey Feldman has had an issue with.
And the media accountability. I mean, when we look at that timeline and we see what happened in terms of the story, and notably 2 women who break this story at the New York Times, notably.
Yes.
Ronan Sparrow's story, also very important. Very important.
The New Yorker story.
Rejected by NBC.
Yeah. His own employer.
Yeah. Which is my point. So you have the New York Times and the New Yorker and NBC, and they're all making these extremely sort of disparate judgments about what to do with these things. Remarkably, there's very little overlap between Ronan's story and there's no overlap.
That's what was so amazing, and he did a very good job of rewriting that story at the last minute to incorporate the New York Times piece, because there's no way they were sharing information, and he waited until the New York Times piece hit and adjusted his accordingly. And incredibly, you're right. There's no overlap. You read the New York Times piece and you thought, oh my gosh, this is just horrible. And I went to a screening that morning. After the New Yorker piece hit, and I walk into the room, and there's a bunch of people, Alonzo Duralde, who of course writes for The Wrap and is a LAFCA colleague of ours, and Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal are sitting there in the room. And the first thing I was like, anybody see the New Yorker? Oh yeah. It's like everyone just said the same thing. It's just so much worse and so much more horrifying than what we imagined.
Yeah, and then got worse as the next 3 or 4 days went by,
and then more people who aren't even named in those pieces are coming forward, and they're still coming forward.
Heather Graham was still at recording of this.
Yeah, at our recording time, Heather Graham had just written an exclusive piece for Variety about the time that Harvey, tried to leverage her. Léa Seydoux, the French actress who had the most horrifying story. And we need to remember, this is Harvey. Whatever happens to Harvey Weinstein, the business has to change. It's
the business itself, Hollywood, and the producers, the whole, everything we talked about earlier. The idea of the Harry Cohn,
who used to run Columbia.
And from
the man who greenlit "It's a Wonderful Life" did not make life very wonderful for a lot of people.
What's the phrase that is commonly used at Harry? You'll
never work in this town again,
because Harry Cohn,
Harry Cohn thing.
He made it true a lot.
Yeah.
For people who double crossed him.
And what goes before that is, if you do not sleep with me, you'll never work in this town again. Yeah. It's not like
that's some people random... never say that part. Though.
Yeah.
People they use it. I think there's somebody wrote a book called but they never say that part about what Harry was saying must happen.
Yes.
And that's 70 years ago now, if not more.
Yeah.
And so it became this idea in town that this the casting couch, and this was a given, and you and I talked about. I mean, in those of us who've been working in media for many years now, we're in a tacit way enablers of this.
Which I also say in my Cinegods piece, which is Hollywood's Bastille moment. So I would urge everybody to go and read that, because I put a lot of damn work in over 2 days.
And as a native of this town, whose father worked in this town, it's good to come for you. Look, I've been here a long time. I've been 27 years, and I have personal experience with this. I told you about my wife and an actress for many years, all that kind of stuff. I understand, and I never wrote a piece I never wrote a piece about the sexual harassment that was commonplace.
None of us did. Nobody did.
My wife used to tell me I can handle it. Don't worry about it. If I can't handle it, I'll let you know I can't handle it. It's just the way it is here. And I let it live in that spot. And Harvey was counting on people like me letting it live in that spot, and other journalists and everyone and producers just letting it live in that spot, and we did forever. And fortunately, Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan, who never did let it live. I want to call out Rose, who started talking about this 20 years ago.
97.
She started talking about this and saying this out loud, and sent that tweet out that got Amazon's price removed from his job, because she sent that tweet out to Jeff Bezos and called him out. Ultimately, Wade, I think that this comes around to men. We keep wanting women to do this and do that, and I'm very proud of all of these women who have done the things that they've done. But you know what? This comes down to men, man.
It does, and we need to underline too. Again, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, who killed himself largely because of being raped at 11. And even somebody like Terry Crews recently came out about this. I mean, this
got grabbed by a guy.
It affects men as well. Elijah Wood has talked about it. Obviously, it affects women disproportionately, more than anyone else, and that's where our focus should be. But we need to remember, it affects everybody, and even if you're a man who hasn't experienced this, you've got a mother. You probably you may have a wife, you may have a sister, you may have a daughter. I mean, this ultimately comes down. This is a societal sickness, and I hope Hollywood really, really takes this moment. Everyone seems to be.
Well, even now, as we speak, and we're talking about Harvey and Harvey's. I'm sure a lot of people have read reports about things that Ben Affleck did, that he ought not to have done.
Which is why I was also saying Warner Brothers has 8 weeks. They got 8 weeks. You just go shoot a scene of Wonder Woman kicking the snot out of Batman. It doesn't have to make sense. It just needs to be in the movie. Go shoot that scene, put it in there. That'll take care of that problem right away.
Take that, Bruce. And I guess if I wanted to, I could go through a list of people for whom we are harboring these open secrets to, right?
Yeah.
I won't do it right now.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to decide what we're going to do about this.
We are.
I can think of at least 5 very important, filmmakers. Let's just call them filmmakers and people for whom there is our set of open secrets right now.
Yeah.
We've had conversations about them. So I'm going to wait and see how these shoes fall. Yeah. I'm going to see if the mainstream media is going to decide, look, we need to answer these questions. I'm going to see if some of these people will I'm wondering if some of these people might step up themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because they know about the open secrets about them. Harvey laughed at the Academy Awards when Seth made that joke
because he thought it was untouchable.
Yeah.
Because he thought it was untouchable.
So these people, they know they know too. So I'm wondering, I would love to see somebody step up and say, you know what? I think I might have been doing some of this sexual harassing stuff, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw myself on my sword right now, and make a whole bunch of mea culpas and apologies, and then take my beat down. Because if they were to be sincere about it, right? I think you know how Hollywood is. Mel Gibson is back. He's fine. We nominated him to Hacksaw Ridge for an Academy Award. He's good. It's fine. If you haven't actually committed a felony, right? You haven't. There are accusations as we sit now. Accusations that Harvey may have raped at least 4 women. 4 women are calling what he did to them rape.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's important to underline too and again, my Cine Gods piece draws a parallel. The Beagleman scandal back in 70s, 80s. They wrote the book Indecent Exposure about that, and you can read all about it. But the thing about that's interesting is that Cliff Robertson was the one who basically he called it out. He blew the whistle, and he wound up being blacklisted as a result.
Yeah.
And that's uncool. That's where that got really, really crazy. And Beagleman was gone, and Hirschfeld was gone. who was the CEO of Columbia, but Cliff Robertson was blacklisted.
He was the one that got punched in the face.
That's kind of crazy, and there was such a disagreement with the Columbia board that this ripped the company apart. A third of the board of the Weinstein Company resigned because they didn't approve of sanctioning Harvey. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they needed to understand, no, there's no sticking up for Harvey at this point.
Bob was willing not to stick up for Harvey, his brother Bob Weinstein,
which tells you a lot.
Yeah, and it tells you what they were putting first.
Yeah. Look, well, the company's finished. They've said we're going to change the name of the company and take Harvey's name off and so forth, but that's not it. The company is tarnished now because so many executives unquestionably knew. They said they didn't, but the settlements are on the records of the company, which means they knew. And if they didn't know, they're terrible executives.
Harvey has a clause in his contract that did not allow him. They're thinking that perhaps he can sue them for firing him because he had a very specific clause in his contract that did not allow him to be fired for claims. And it says this, and you can find it on the internet, for claims of sexual harassment. Now, what we have here are more than claims of sexual harassment. We have proof of sexual harassment. So that's what the company is leaning on in order to enforce the firing.
And I'm going to say, and we'll transition out of this, I don't really, at this point, I'm not married to what happens to Harvey Weinstein. Justice will take its course. The NYPD, LAPD, London Police, FBI, they're doing what they are. There are civil suits that can follow. That'll take its course. I'm not invested in that. I'm invested in when my 4-year-old daughter is old enough to decide what she wants to do for a career. If she chooses to be an actress and goes out on auditions, I want to be able to feel as safe and secure about her going to a professional job meeting as I would if she were an attorney or an accountant or a banker or a stockbroker. And I don't feel that way right now. And for the business that is considered the media center of the world, which decides what everyone is going to think and hear and see and wear and smell, that's really an embarrassment.
Yeah. It's a particular thing about this dream making. Yeah, look, dreams.
It's it.
Dreams
turn into nightmares.
Yeah. So there we are. Anyway, there we go.
Well, we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. We've got an interview with another great author of a Disney book, and we've got a couple of giveaways. At least one. Hopefully, going to get to the other giveaway as well. I want to start up with just a few docs, and then we'll get into some new movies. There's a really great series here from Facets that it's quite an investment if you want to get the whole thing, but it's really interesting. It's 9 separate DVDs by Laszlo Moholy Nagy. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name.
He's an exquisite photographer. He's one of my favorite photographers.
And these were all made basically in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. Nagy taught at the Institute of Design in Chicago, and these were all kind of made in and around his work as a teacher and as a photographer. And it's really, really interesting stuff. It's all very kind of avant-garde art, architecture, documentary filmmaking. Do Not Disturb. Design workshops is really interesting. Lobsters is just utterly bizarre and cool, and it's just. I mean, this stuff it's a real trip. If you're an experimental filmmaker, if you're a fan of Laurie Anderson's work, if you're a fan of what's his name, the who has the special criterion. I'm drawing a blank now. The great experimental photographer, experimental filmmaker. I'm totally drawing a blank. But anyway.
Yeah.
So Architects Congress, the other one's Big City Gypsies. Berlin Still Life is really, really beautiful. Berlin Still Life is wonderful. That was made in 1931 in Germany before, obviously, Hitler's rise to power and so forth. And it's really, it's quite an amazing snapshot in time. Just street life in Berlin. It's really, it's just beautiful and heartbreaking. A thing called A Light Play, Black and White, Black, White, Gray. And then the last two are impressions of the old Marseille harbor, where I used to live in Marseille. It's just beautiful. This was made in 1929. It's just absolutely wonderful. And the last one is
that's all renovated now.
Yeah, it's all changed. Big old new mall and everything.
Yeah.
The new architecture and the London Zoo. And I've never been to the London Zoo, but I really, really want to now. It's just beautiful. That was made in 1936. So 20s, 30s, and 40s is when all this stuff was made. This is one of the legendary photographers of all time. Really, really cool avant-garde documentary filmmaking. It's really, really great. So go get that. That's from Facets. And you should go to facets.com and just see what they've got. But the filmmaker is Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, and we will have the list of all of this stuff at digigods.com. And a few other docs here real quickly just to cut through this. I think we'll save the other half of the docs for later in the show because there's a lot of doc stuff here. There's a Smithsonian Channel series that I was unaware of before, which I think is actually pretty neat. It's called The Real Story. And these are basically making of documentaries, kind of. They're not the making of the movies per se that they're about, but they're sort of the backstory is a better way of saying it. This is like you've seen the movie, here's the real story. And the real story, and these are the episodes: Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Scream, Saving Private Ryan, Pirates of the Caribbean, Platoon. And Close Encounters is the coolest one by far. Not just because the movie is great, but the everything that goes on behind the history of UFO sightings and everything that inspired the movie is really very, very interesting. Scream is less interesting. Saving Private Ryan is really, really great. Was there a real Private Ryan? And if so, what happened? Really great. Pirates of the Caribbean goes into the whole history of the real Pirates of the Caribbean, the slave trade, all that stuff, and it's very different from what you see in the movies and the Disney ride. And then Platoon obviously takes us back to the Vietnam era and how closely the movie actually aligns, which is modestly well. And that's that. And then the last few quick little docs here. There's a PBS doc called The Farthest: Voyager in Space. 12 billion miles and counting. We keep forgetting that Voyager is still out there, pumping away ever since 1977. And this is a nice little reminder of that amazing pioneering effort. A great PBS Blu-ray called Big Pacific, which is really just amazing high-def photography of things that we used to never be able to see. They take cameras now to where they should never be able to go, and they get incredible sea life photography. It is Jacques Cousteau must be just squirming in his grave or in his crypt at what they can do now and the things that he wished he could have done then. Kind of an interesting dance documentary here by a filmmaker named Tomer Heyman called Mr. Gaga. This is centering around Ohad Naharin and the Batsheva Dance Company. And it doesn't really transcend the dance documentary, but it is, in terms of its sort of aggressive choreography, it is interesting. If you like dance documentaries, that's from Icarus Films Home Video. Check it out. It's it's worth watching. It is very polished, very nicely made. Not exactly my style of dancing, but they don't really make a lot of documentaries about square dancing and line dancing. And then lastly, here is a Blu-ray, America Promised Land from the History Channel. It's a little fluffy, but it actually is very, very touching at times, and gets into the forces that shaped America and our immigration and our culture and all that. It's a little bit broad for what it tries to do. It's 3 hours long, and that still doesn't feel like it's even remotely long enough. But it is it's otherwise a very nicely put together and a very polished thing. So maybe a part 2 would be in order. What else we got, Tim?
You want to knock off a few of these?
Let's do that. Let's do the new movies.
These brand new movies.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and do the Girls Trip here. Because I got to tell you, I really love this
good.
movie. I thought it was really, really neat.
I expected this to be junk. You know, like, oh, it's another girl. It's like, what was the one with Tina Fey or the others? It's just, I mean, we've got a bunch of these.
There was a whole bunch of them with
Bad Moms.
all the way back Brides. I guess it starts with Brides. I guess maybe Bridesmaids.
Bad Moms.
Bad Moms. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And but this is just really very clever and very funny.
Yeah.
And surprisingly on point. You know, oddly, Malcolm D. Lee.
Spike Lee's
nephew, right? Yeah. Who it's odd for me to say this right now.
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
Malcolm has had more hits. He's had more hits. I mean, if we're just talking about more important movies, no, Spike's got more important movies, but Malcolm's had more hits.
Malcolm, in many ways, is. I don't want to say he's more talented than Spike. He's not, but he's more, and he's not smarter than Spike, but he's savvier than Spike.
He's savvier about what he is. Malcolm is just making movies.
That's it.
Literally making movies. Spike is making films.
There you go.
And I know that's tweet, but it's at the bottom of it. Malcolm and thus Girls Trip. This movie has made more money than any movie Spike Lee has ever. This movie has made more money by itself than 3 combined Spike Lee films.
Yeah.
So that's just a funny sort of thing to me, which adds up to absolutely nothing. Deleted scenes, commentary by the director, a lot of outtakes on this. It's just a lot of fun. And it's a neat little story, and it's sexy, and you get to see the sisters have some fun. Blu-ray DVD.
It's good stuff.
This is the unrated, by the way.
Oh,
which is funny to me because that's got to be the filthiest movie among the filthiest movies I've ever seen in a theater. So what they could possibly put in the unrated one, I have no idea.
We also have a thing here called Pilgrimage, with the very talented Tom Holland, who I'm almost certain made this before he made Spider-Man, because he would never have done this if he were all Spider-Man out already. This is just not what you do as a follow-up to Spider-Man. But he's in it. He co-stars with Richard Armitage and Don Bernthal. And this is one of those really just one of those medieval quasi-epics that go straight to video that I would love to be more forgiving about, and I have a really, really hard time doing so. They get all kinds of Irish and Welsh tax credits, and they go and borrow a few uniforms left over from Henry V, the Kenneth Branagh film from 30 years ago, and then they sock them in it, and they make a movie that looks like a big period epic that really they spent next to no money on. That's typically how these things happen. I know that because I have friends that made one that way.
Yeah. What are you
they got a bunch of money back from Wales, and they went and wet the mud down and got some horses and swords and guys with beards, and there it was. They got a
movie. Field in England. What's that couple that made Field in England?
Oh yeah,
because they get away with it. They can get away with it. It says, but sometimes you can't.
Anyway, this thing is directed by Brendan Muldowney. Don't know who he is, but anyway. This is basically Tom Holland plays a monk who is leaving his monastery and in the company of a former crusader played by John Bernthal, who's also very good, plays the Punisher on the television Marvel stuff on Netflix. And he has his own series, and their job is to kind of do an inverse of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They have this relic that they need to get to Rome. And needless to say, along the way, it gets very hard, and they get attacked, and they get, whatever. Fill in the blanks.
It's a little like Warriors, only,
well, everyone
more
thinks,
Irish.
Everyone thinks the relic is, has powers and all this. So it's kind of a reverse Raiders of the Lost Ark thing in a way. It's not bad. It's not well done. It's very obvious, and you can sort of see all the financial seams. But if you like these kinds of things, you'll probably be fine with it. It's called Pilgrimage, and I love the tagline. The road to salvation is paved in blood. Who comes up with that stuff?
I used to come up with those actually years
ago. Right, you did.
I wrote a bunch of those, a few for Spike Lee, as a matter of fact. Florence Pugh is really excellent in this film called Lady Macbeth. Right, and now it's not the Shakespeare. It's very, very interesting. It's set in 1865. It's about this young woman who's married off, as was the case occasionally back then, to an older man. Loveless marriage. Certainly, he is vicious and abusive to her, as is his family. She falls in love, as is going to happen in these sort of films, with a young man who works for, and you have one of these stories. What it's really about, though, is the way she connives to get everything she wants, because she doesn't just want the younger man, she wants everything.
Yeah.
And I really, because what this film does is you empathize with her because of how brutally he and his family treat her before she starts cheating. And that's a very particular thing, because technically she's cheating and she's going to take this guy's estate. But you know what? I think I'm thinking about Harvey Weinstein's situation right now. I mean, I think I got completely overwhelmed by it. But I do like this movie quite a lot. It's very, very good. There's a behind the scenes featurette in Photo Gallery on the DVD, and Florence Pugh is just very, very good.
Sweet. We got a movie here called Fallen. It's only on DVD, not on Blu-ray. Probably deservedly so, because nobody's going to really want to see this on Blu-ray. There's a really interesting story behind the story. The story in the movie is not very interesting. The story behind the movie is. This is an Australian-Canadian co-production about a girl who goes to a reform school, which looks like a Gothic mansion out in the middle. It's like go to reform school in Downton Abbey, basically. Let's take Downton Abbey and turn it into a reform school. I don't know anyone who would have a reform school in a building that should be a museum. And then among the activities that you have troubled kids, violent kids with tarnished backgrounds doing in this reform school, hey, Tim, how about fencing?
Let's give them swords.
Why not put them out on the shooting range? Are you kidding me? It's a very strange movie that takes all of its cues inappropriately from the Twilight movies and from Harry Potter and from pretty much all of these youth-oriented fantasy films. The idea here, however, is that these kids in this school, not all of them, but a substantial number of them, are immortal fallen angels from the war in heaven. And, there's a whole kind of reincarnation or endless resurrection thing. This girl keeps dying over and over and has many past lives, and they keep trying to find each other over all the centuries. It's all very, very airport novel. And I just can't deal with it. It just is not a very, very good film at all. What makes it so sad and so unfortunate is that it's directed by Scott Hicks. And I'm a fan of Scott Hicks.
He got off to a really good start.
Man, did he get off to a good start. Scott Hicks, who, of course, directed the Oscar-nominated Shine, the Oscar-winning Shine for Jeffrey Rush, and went on to make Snow Falling on Cedars, which I still think is an underrated film. I think Snow Falling on Cedars has wonderful stuff in it, but it got so beat up because it was so over budget and it didn't perform. And
Ethan Ishiguro won I think he just won a Nobel finally, not for
yes, he did,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
finally, interesting. But he got off to a really good start.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
yes, he did. So anyway, Scott Hicks, I hope you find your way back.
Another guy that got off to a really good start is Wesley Snipes, who really did get off to a great start, man. So
you know what? Let me tell you something. John Koskinen, his term as head of the IRS ends next month. Wesley Snipes, let him be head of the IRS. Seriously, because that would be hilarious.
After those IRS problems, I don't know what. Anyway, this is his movie. Wesley Snipes, Armed Response, No Retreat, No Mercy. I actually saw this film for the show when it was in theaters for 45 seconds. Anne Heche is in this movie. A whole bunch of sort of like tactical armory guys, including Anne Heche and Wesley Snipes, have to take over this compound. This compound is a place where they take bad guys from all over the world, terrorists and narco drug dealers, Russian mob guys, and they interrogate them using this AI.
Yeah,
this is extremely powerful AI that can dig into their minds and find all kinds of secrets. Ooh. Anyway, the AI goes amok. And takes over the building. And this
I hate it when that happens.
Isn't it just a bummer? And this movie is stupid, so forget about all of that. What is interesting, though, is that the guy who directed this movie is a guy named John Stockwell. And again, this is another guy who started pretty good. He was an actor. You know John. He was an actor 25 years. Yeah. He's in early time, So Fine.
Yeah.
All kind of early time Cruise movies. If you saw his face, you'd know him as a young actor in the 80s. And then he became a director. And when he first got started, he directed a movie called Crazy Beautiful with a young Jay.
That's right.
With Kirsten. A lovely little movie. He directed Blue Crush. He directed Into the Blue, Teresa. Middle of
some good movies.
Some decent movies.
Yeah.
And, move forward, 10, 15 years, and we get into, Cat Run 2 and Countdown and Kickboxer Vengeance and Armed Response, which despite the fact that it stars Wesley. Wesley used to be just this guy. He's a wonderful actor. People forget that because he's been doing this chop socky, SWAT team kind of stuff for 20 years now. But there was a time when Wesley Snipes was a wonderful actor. He made a movie with Mike Figgis, One Night Stand.
Yeah.
Natasha Kinski.
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful movie. He's in Maya Angelou's only directorial effort, I think, Down in the Delta. Wesley Snipes is wonderful in that.
He's
movie.
Great.
And then, he makes a bunch of these. Anyway, whatever. This
Water Dance.
I forgot about the
it's fantastic with Eric Stoltz. Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. Oh, man. I don't know. It's a very strange thing. We should do a show about that someday.
We should.
Just these, what happens.
Wesley Snipes is a guy who is going to show up one of these days when he gets to that Richard Gere place.
Yeah.
He doesn't care anymore, and he's got his money, and he can't be a leading man anymore.
Can't get his leg over his head.
But you know what? He's gonna dirty himself up, and he's gonna start playing interesting characters again. It's gonna be interesting.
It always happens, doesn't it?
So I'm gonna hit some kid vid here real quickly. We've got something here we're gonna give away. We're gonna give away one copy of Drawn Together, the complete collection from Comedy Central. Send us an email to gods@digigods.com. Again, gods@digigods.com. If we get the email date stamped by the 20th, by October 20th, with your name in the your name and address in the body of the email and drawn DRAWN in the subject line, you will be we'll choose one winner at random, and you're going to get a copy of Drawn Together, the complete collection from Comedy Central. Again, email to gods@digigods.com, drawn in the subject line, and your name and address in the body. We will pick someone lucky, let you know by the 22nd, and we'll have Paramount send it out to you. This is a Comedy Central show that is actually very, very funny. It's kind of a this almost should be an Adult Swim thing, to be honest. Did you ever see this, Drawn Together?
Oh yeah,
it's hysterical.
It's very sexy. Overtly.
Well, it's a mock reality animated reality show.
They're all living in a house.
They're living in a house with the cameras and all these different animated characters who are in completely disparate cartoons who all represent actual, like, what everyone represents. They're not the actual cartoon characters, but you know what they're riffing on.
Yeah,
and it's quite fun, and it's very irreverent and terribly funny. I think it's really, really sharp. So this ran from 2004 up to 2010, intermittently, like 2004, 2007, and then there was an extra season in 2010. Anyway, I had never seen this before. I think it's very funny. 36 episodes and a movie. Definitely check it out. Drawn Together, the complete collection. It's good, and we're giving one away. gods@digigods.com. Put Drawn in the subject line. That isn't exactly kid vid, but it's sort of in the in the animated
don't show
realm.
That to your children.
No, we've got the insufferably saccharine Shopkins World Vacation. I can't really recommend this. This is not exemplary for young girls, especially when you have a character named Kooky Cookie. That's not working for me. It's not working for my daughter. We're going to stick with Disney princesses. I guess there's probably a Shopkins equivalent of Bronies, which would probably be where I'd recommend this. We also have a thing called Happy Birthday, which is a bunch of PBS shows that have birthday episodes, which Arthur and Caillou and Odd Squad and Super Y and Walt Kratz. It's just this is for a kid's birthday party. You can pick that up. That's from PBS Kids. Happy Birthday. Also not necessarily for kids is a Blu-ray of the 5th season of Samurai Jack, which we're also going to be covering the complete collection when they eventually get that to us. But this is the 10 episodes from the 5th season, which is out now. And Samurai Jack continues to be a really surprising series, very aggressively animated.
Samurai Jack. I love that.
It's so aggressively animated, and
Genndy. And what's weird is when he did that live action film, those vampire cartoons, not live action, big feature animated film. with Adam Sandler,
Yeah.
drag whatever. It's completely the opposite. It sort of visually looks the same, sort of big flat, but nothing but talking, nothing
No.
but talking. And in Samurai Jack, sometimes Samurai Jack would walk around for 2 minutes and nobody would say anything.
It's great.
That's just fantastic.
It's really cool. It's and the style is it's less anime than it is kind of that 60s
Sort of,
Depati
Yeah,
style with
yeah.
the like Inspector Clouseau and those things. It's sort of a little bit closer to that, but it's a little more aggressive and modern at times. It's hard to peg the style,
But it's all
cool.
very flat and primary color. I just love it. And black, of course.
Yeah. And if you have a child who is young and that you're trying to potty train, having gone through this, I know we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this because some of you are going through this. The anthological PBS Kids It's Potty Time is also helpful. This is a bunch of shows, 2 of them from Daniel Tiger, 1 from Peg and Cat, and the other one from Dinosaur Train, that will help you explain the scatological process to your child and why they should learn to do it on the potty. I'm sorry to be so explicit. This is a family show, and that's why.
No.
Wild Kratts, Wild Winter Creatures. I still don't really get the Wild Kratts thing, but I guess it's got a following. 4 episodes here, very adventuresome. Polar Bears Don't Dance. Mystery of the Weird Looking Walrus. Well, whatever. Knock yourselves out. We love Peppa Pig. We got 12 episodes of Peppa on Princess Peppa. The show continues to be awesome. I wish they'd release every episode once and for all, but I'll take the little tidbits as they slowly let them drip out. Princess Peppa is the anchor episode on here. The Tooth Fairy is a great one. Tooth Fairy is so freaking funny. It's unbelievable. You also have The Queen, The Blackberry Bush, which is also legendary, and Treasure Hunt. So that's a new collection of 12 Peppa Pig episodes. We also have Justice League Action, Superpowers Unite. Don't particularly like the animation in this, but the show itself, in terms of the content and the writing, is fine. I kind of skimmed this a little bit. There's some fun villain stuff in here. I like the way that some of the heroes that don't show up in the live action movies do show up in here. Plastic Man is always a fun one. So for DC addicts that aren't getting all their juice from the live action films, check out Justice League Action, Superpowers Unite, 26 episodes on 2 discs. Coming down to the bottom of the pile here is the complete 9th season of SpongeBob SquarePants on Nickelodeon. This continues to be exactly the same as everything else. Pretty much every episode just sort of goes through the same motions. I guess it's funny. Some kids love this stuff. A lot of kids that are my daughter's age, I don't really get it, but go for it. It's all very spongy. We also have Nexo Knights, another one of these Lego animated things. Storm Over Nighton, Knighton. I'm really over the thing, the Ninjago movie.
I
really,
had to see
crashed
that
and
for
burned.
this show too. Same thing. Just hyperkinetic,
Too much.
loud. No.
10 episodes, only for people who love it. Also from PBS Kids, Dinosaur Train, Dinosaurs Take Flight. This is 8 episodes that are fine. They kind of do the same thing over and over, but this is a well-animated, well-produced, cute show from the Henson people. Henson's kids are, keeping this going, and they do a good job with it. It's educational. You learn about dinosaurs. And when we were in Texas recently, we went to Ross Perot's Natural History Museum. I didn't tell you about that, did I?
No, I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, I didn't either. So, we were in Texas for a moment, visiting my wife's sister who lives in Texas with her family, and it was hot and humid, disgusting, which I know you know from St. Louis. I'm not going to complain.
Taking a shower all the time.
Ugh. But I went to the George Bush Presidential Library, which was interesting. Smaller than I thought, but I got a picture of myself taken in the Oval Office, so why the hell not? And then we went to this really interesting dinosaur. It's like a nature preserve where they have animatronic dinosaurs on one of the trails, and they roar at you, and you get to take pictures with them. It's kind of cool, actually. What I would do for them, I wish they would let me hide the speaker of the dinosaur roar under some dirt and some leaves, hide the cabling, and then put the speaker in one of those fake rocks so that it doesn't look like there's a boombox sitting right behind the dinosaur. because that's that kind of takes away from the experience a bit. But no, and then we went to Ross Perot's place, which has it's like giant dinosaur bones and pterodactyls and all kinds of fun stuff and games that you play teach you physics and.
May I ask a question about Ross?
Yeah.
Is he dead?
No.
Oh, dude, if you had bet me $100, I'd have said he was dead.
But isn't that funny? He was the man. He was the original. Third party guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's the reason why HW didn't get that second term.
Yeah,
I mean, that's no doubt about that.
And then he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
no one even talks about it anymore.
Out of that money, he was dead. I'm glad he's still going. Way to go, H. Ross.
And then the last one here is Kuku Harajuku, super kawaii. It's not anime, but it thinks it is. And Kuku Harajuku is actually co-created by Gwen Stefani. And that's why all these girls with the long, skinny legs and the big eyes, they all kind of look a little bit like Gwen Stefani in a way. This is basically a story of a pop band. And it's all very Hello Kitty feeling. And it's kind of somewhere between Gwen Stefani and kind of a Hello Kitty anime Japanese kitsch. It's surprisingly tolerable for me as a middle-aged male to deal with this, but I can't imagine my daughter caring much about this. But it's cute.
I think that kid, the character is cute. The character is cute.
The animation's cute.
The actual physical character.
The whole girly thing, the whole pop band thing is cute.
I enjoy that stuff. I'm gonna knock a couple more recent movies releases here, including Baby Driver, which Edgar Wright's film, which I think people have forgotten about this film. This is a really good movie that people liked early in the year.
Yeah, it kind of had its moment during the summer.
Yeah, and people sort of forgot about it as things start to stink up around the place. It's been a crap. These are mostly a crappy year for movies, by the way. Not great. It's going to be interesting as we go into award season.
Yes, it will.
Because unless they come out in the next few months, there's not going to be a whole. I mean, I know Dunkirk and a few of these.
Yeah.
But Baby Driver was one of them that's looking a whole lot better as the year goes on. Anyway, this digital HD with ultraviolet has all kinds of crap on it, including over 2 hours of all kinds of special features. The movie is kind of neat though. I liked the idea. This is really the first film that I've seen Ansel Elgort, that I actually liked him in.
Yeah.
I've been poking him a lot for the last couple of years because, generally speaking, he's been the worst thing in every movie he's been in.
He does. And he has manners. He's very mannered, and I'm surprised that
you can see him acting all over the place.
I'm surprised that his directors don't say that thing that you're doing with your lips. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
You do that in every single movie. That's a tell. And it's a crutch, and just don't do that.
Yeah, so anyway, he's better in this than he is in anything else.
Yeah.
But mostly, this is driven by the music. See that pun I did there? Driven by the music. As he's driving along, this young getaway driver listens to his soundtrack, and there's a lot of fantastic score. Kevin Spacey is pretty good in it, doing that Kevin Spacey thing.
Right.
Jamie Foxx actually pretty good in it. Jamie Foxx, to me, he's becoming a much better second lead.
Yeah.
Where he can play quirky and do these. He's a lead. He's still a leading man. I get that.
Jamie Foxx is a really interesting actor because he's a guy who can play a lead. He has lead talent. He has a lead physique. He has lead presence, which is partly what you have to have. You have to have a certain physicality to be a leading man. But at the same time, he has character actor skills. Right, and that doesn't always, you sometimes get caught in the lurch. Like, are you gonna let go of your lead career? And Shelley Winters was in that place once upon a time.
Yeah,
and Shelley Winters basically decided she didn't want to be her pal Marilyn Monroe. She didn't want to be a lead actress, and she let it go.
Yeah. She saw what happened to her. She started eating those potatoes and had herself a career for the next 40 years.
That was it.
And which ain't the craziest thing in the world.
No, it's not.
The House, dude, Will Ferrell, Amy Poehler. I got to tell you, this is really a terrible movie, and
just don't know how this stuff gets made.
But I love Amy, who is, in addition to being very, very funny. I don't know if a lot of people agree with that. I think Amy Poehler is kind of sexy.
Of course,
she's got like a
I'm there.
But this movie is just not working all over the place.
About two parents who create an illicit
gambling casino
in their basement. It's just nonsense.
Jeremy Renner shows. Anyway, this special features on the DVD, loaded with all kinds of crap. on here, deleted scenes, extended alternate scenes as a gag reel. There's all kinds of games to play. It would probably be more interesting to play all the games and watch the special features on this than it would be to actually watch the movie. Anyway, The House.
Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the first 100% Spider-Man movie since Disney and Columbia agreed to share the character, which means that basically Disney makes these movies and Columbia puts their name on it. Here's the drill. Tom Holland again. He's our new Spider-Man. We know that from the last Captain America movie where they introduced him and made him part of the Avengers.
Tom Holland, who's in Pilgrimage. We talked about a little while ago, yeah.
And he's a good Spider-Man. I don't know that he's better than Tobey Maguire was.
He's not. Let me say he's not. I'll go on.
I think he's better than Garfield was.
Of course, yeah.
But he's fine. And this is kind of a minor Spider-Man movie. And I find this interesting because I still don't think there's any beating the first two Raimi films. Right. I think Spider-Man 1 and 2 and of the three
particularly
Raimi
that first one, it's still my favorite film.
They're great. They're absolutely terrific. And the effects are better in the second one, but the story's better in the first one. And those are terrific.
A lot of heart in that first one. Him and Kirsten Dunst. I mean, just so. This movie here, the most interesting thing about that movie, and this I like this movie. It's fine.
It's fine. It's middling.
But who I was paying attention to in this movie is the 65-year-old Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
The villain is way more interesting than the Spider-Boy.
True.
And frankly, the second most interesting person in the movie was Aunt May, Marissa Tomei.
You realize, and I was making this point too, we have gone from Aunt May in the Raimi films, who was played by Harris, Rosemary Harris.
Oh, Rosemary Harris, yes.
Rosemary Harris. Who is, she's Aunt May, like in her 70s. And then we went to Sally Field.
Knocked 15 years off.
And now we are at Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei, who is 52.
I am such a fan of Marissa Tomei because now Aunt May is my age.
Me and Aunt May would be just fine together.
I'd be so fine. Spider-Man, may I be your uncle?
But I'm watching these scenes and I'm like, kid, get out of here. She was like, go save something. I need to talk to May.
That really cracks me up.
It was funny. And she has the funniest scene in the movie. She does. The last moment in the movie is her moment, and it is the funniest moment in the movie.
And of course, Robert Downey Jr. is in here doing his Iron Man Stark thing again. So this is on 4K, and it's starting to be a regular thing now for superhero movies to come out on 4K. It looks terrific, really first-rate. The CGI effects much better than what we've had in the past for any of the Spider-Man movies. We've really, really perfected it now. It's head and shoulders above. There's an hour's worth of extras, deleted scenes. All that stuff is perfectly fine, but really, ultimately, the HDR is just sizzling. Spider-Man's blue and red has never been bluer or redder, and it really, really benefits the effects. This is a tremendous showcase for the 4K format. If you are an early adopter, and this is one you should definitely have in your library for sure. Although I don't know who Bill Zwecker is at the Chicago Sun-Times who said best Spider-Man ever. I don't know who you are, dude.
Bill,
but you're wrong.
Yeah. Roger Ebert is turning the Chicago Sun-Times, right?
Yeah.
Sharknado 5. We're up to 5.
Yep. And funny thing, I was just communicating with we're going to get an interview with David Latt one of these days. Okay. David Latt, who is one of the principals and the founders of the Asylum that makes these movies. And David is a very old friend of mine. You've been to his parties with me.
Yeah.
David's a great guy. He and David Ramawi, who worked with my wife at one point, they formed the Asylum years ago, and I remember when they did it. And I remember David's first, January 1 party when we went there, and they'd formed a company, and he was like, "All right, good for you."
Neat little movies, always,
they're
movies that were
mockbusters,
mockbusters of one thing or another. But so, man, they've knocked it out of the park with these boys.
Well, I was communicating. I'm going to give him a call soon, and we're gonna sit him down for an interview and to talk all about the Asylum and their movies. But anyway, yes, Sharknado. We are up to 5.
5. Global swarming. I wonder what they can possibly do next. North America is in ruins. The rest of the world braces for the inevitable global Sharknado attack, and you still got your boy Ian hanging around in these movies from 90210 Terror Region. You wonder where all the people who you used to have crushes on in like the early 90s, and some of them actually were A-list movie stars. Jerry Reed was an A-list movie star for a second there. They're in these movies is where they've gone. This has all kinds of great stuff on it. The making of, anatomy of a Sharknado ending, all kinds of cameos from the film, deleted alternate scenes, filmmakers' commentaries, and special effects, layout of these special effects. So the movies are fun. But frankly, if you're the kind of person who's into horror filmmaking, thriller filmmaking, and you want to know how these things are done, get this and pay attention to it. I'm not going to pretend like this is my cup of tea. It's not. But I do find these phenomenons fascinating.
Yep.
They're really interesting.
I know.
When one of these things sort of hit, people have parties to watch these goofy movies, and and you talk all the way through the movies, and you do shots, and you have a good time. That'll be an interesting thing to talk with David about.
Yes, it will.
Sharknado 5.
So I've got 5 movies here, and I want to talk about all these in one fell shot. And I want to make mention of one other thing first, and that is there's another little bit of news this week, which we probably would have made at the top of the show, but Harvey just dominates everything. And that news is movies everywhere. I posted there's a thing also on the Synagogue's page. This is a big deal because the rumor hit about 48 hours before the confirmation of the rumor, which is a pretty great secret to keep, considering that the confirmation of that the rumor itself was released basically in a press release. So what has happened is this. All the companies that were part of Ultraviolet, I'm going to trace the timeline a little bit. All the companies that were part of Ultraviolet, which is you had Warner Brothers and Fox and Universal and Paramount and Lionsgate, and who else was in there? Sony. Okay. All of them except for Paramount and Lionsgate have thrown in the towel.
On the format.
On the format. They've thrown in the towel, cried uncle, and they are migrating over to Disney's Disney Movies Anywhere platform, which is now being rebranded Movies Anywhere. If you were on Disney Movies Anywhere, you've got to create a new account. Even if you're a Disney person only, you've got to create a new account. And it's still uncertain. I have emailed these people and I have not heard back because I think it's a little bit uncertain as to how you're migrating your Ultraviolet stuff, if you are migrating. But the bottom line is this is what's going to happen. And eventually Paramount and Lionsgate will sign on as well, make no mistake. And other companies will sign on too now that there's a single format. It's like Blu-ray, right, when it defeated HD DVD. So now for your digital locker platform, there's going to be only one, Movies Anywhere. And all the major studios and Lionsgate are going to be signed on eventually. Paramount and Lionsgate are the only holdouts, and you will be able to use Vudu, Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, or their own proprietary app as your player. Ultraviolet never had enough proprietary app. You go to the Ultraviolet site is where you sign in, but then you had to go to Vudu or Flixster in order to watch the movie, but then sometimes you had to go to proprietary studio sites to enter the code. Like a Fox film, you had to go to the Fox site. Universal, you had to go to the Universal site. Total hassle. Then Fox went to with like these with the barcodes. Real hassle. It never really worked right. And now you go to one site, you enter the code, and you watch your movie there, unless you like to buy your movies at Google or you buy your movies at iTunes. If you buy other movies at one of these sites, you can watch it there as well. It's everywhere. You just log that thing in, and it'll appear on Amazon, appear on iTunes, it'll just always be there in all these different places. It's a great, great, great move. So we're very excited about that.
Absolutely.
Now, the other thing that happened recently, the Las Vegas shooter. Now, we're not going to have any discussion about guns in America and violence in America, but I want to point something out. Movies and guns, people ask, why is violence in America so ubiquitous? Why are guns so ubiquitous? Guns are so ubiquitous because I have 5 movies, 5 Blu-rays coming out this week in my hands that all have pictures of people with guns on the cover. And you know what? I don't begrudge them that, but you have to understand, we are inundated with guns all day long, every day in our movies.
You're absolutely. I'm going to let you go on with it, and then I'm going to talk about a film from a very long time ago called Trespass. You'll remember
sure.
in the big controversy about a gun on that poster.
Yep.
But anyway, you go on.
So, very, very white-haired Tom Berenger stars with Billy Zane and Chad Michael Collins in Sniper: Ultimate Kill. This time, weapons change the game. Okay, this is this is another military guys fighting drug cartels movie. Not very good, but look, we got Tom Berenger with the and guy with a pistol, and Billy Zane with a big rifle. It turned on the back, and there he is with an even bigger gun. Look at that damn thing.
They're right. The guns change.
Guns all over the place. Then we also have It Stains the Sands Red. It Stains the Sands Red is a silly, silly zombie movie that starts off with a great big CGI scene of a post-apocalyptic anti-zombie war scene on the Las Vegas Strip, and then quickly becomes a movie about a woman who is running from a zombie in the desert that cost about 18 cents. And there are maybe 3 or 4 other actors in this thing at various times, but for the most part, it's just a woman being chased by a zombie, and occasionally she'll get up on a little rock outcropping and frustrate the zombie and hand him a sandwich, and it just becomes really dumb. But you know what? For some dumb reason, even though this movie has almost no guns in it, we put a guy with a gun on the cover.
On the cover, yeah.
Okay, no guns in the movie, the guy with a gun on the cover. We also have Justice with Stephen Lang and Nathan Parsons. This is a Western. It's just a kind of a lame Western, to be honest. It's it's after the Civil War, and it's just another one of those kind of
It's one of those moments where Stephen Lang gets to play a leading man.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Gets to be at the front because he's in like the next 5 Avatars, so he never needs to work again. When is he gonna get a chance to star in a film? They say we'll let you star, and they put him in a movie.
It's a revenge movie, but look, there are guys with guns. It's a Western.
Yeah,
I'll give you a pass. Guys with guns. And then we've got Shot Caller with Benjamin Bratt, John Bernthal again, Lake Bell, a bunch of people. Shot Caller, but it's a cop thing again. Look, guys with guns all over the cover of this thing. There's a whole kind of a it's a prison and drug cartel kind of thing. Just it's like a standard how do you fight your way out of the hole in prison kind of a movie. And it's just loaded with guns. And then lastly, Bushwick, which is a very silly movie starring Dave Bautista and Brittany Snow. Dave Bautista, of course, who is from Guardians of the Galaxy, also in the new Blade Runner.
Yeah.
This is a one it's like rope, right? The whole thing is shot like as if it's one continuous shot,
which it's not.
But it's meant to look like it. It takes place in Brooklyn, on the premise that Texas has had enough and Texas is going to secede from the Union, and the way they're going to do it is by invading Brooklyn. Don't ask why. Don't even try to make sense of that. Doesn't make any sense. Texas has launched a paramilitary invasion of Brooklyn, and you have a really, really dumb action movie that transpires with this woman whose boyfriend was just killed, and she teams up with a former military guy played by Dave Bautista, and they've got to make it through the battle zone of Brooklyn that's now in complete chaos. It's called Bushwick. Silly movie, Blu-ray DVD combo set. But again, there's Dave Bautista with a gun, Brittany Snow with a gun.
Yeah.
Turn around, Dave Bautista and Brittany Snow with guns. So, the point being, guns are ubiquitous on our movie covers.
Yeah.
Walk into any Best Buy or whatever. This is 5 movies I pulled out of the stack. They all are just riddled with guns in the cover. So, when things like Las Vegas happen, understand, guns are ubiquitous in American pop culture.
It is a part of the language dynamic, and it's funny. It's a movie thing because it's not a record thing. You don't see guns on the cover of record or CD albums. I guess they would be now. Anyway, I'll skip the thing about Trespass. Not important. I have 2 movies here that don't have guns on the cover. One of them, and here's the thing. I like both of these silly movies, and they're both silly.
Yep.
Right? But I like them both. I've seen both of these movies, and they actually both kind of work for me. They couldn't be more different, right? First one, Where's the Money? Andrew Bachelor and a few other people, including Mike Epps and Terry Crews, in this movie. This is what this movie's about. This movie's about a brother. There's a whole bunch of money. Money goes missing. He figures out where the money is. In order to get to the money, he has to rush this all-white fraternity at a sort of like USCE
kind of school. Crying out loud.
It is just the dumbest thing in the world. And it's hysterically funny. There are no guns. Nobody gets shot. There's a little, the sort of stupid pranksterism that goes on. And yes, you have that sort of funny racial dynamics there, but it's not particularly pointed, and it's all kind of ridiculously empathetic. And, you get Terry Crews and you get Mike Epps, and you got yourself one dumb, funny movie that I kind of liked a lot. I'm sorry, I did. I liked it. Heritage Falls, same thing, the completely different movie, right? So this movie is about this guy, David Keith, who I always get mixed up with Keith David. Keith David is the black one. David Keith is the white one. David Keith was in An Officer and a Gentleman. Keith David was in They Live.
Yes.
The great fight scene with Roddy Piper.
Sure.
So anyway, this is the other guy, David Keith, and a few other people you've never heard of. And they're in this movie, and he's playing this basketball coach, Georgia basketball coach, right? The most winning basketball coach in high school Georgia history, right? He's got this son who's a bookworm, a nerd. He's married. He's never connected with his son. This movie is just about this guy trying to figure out a way to connect with his son. And he does. And it's just the damn sweetest thing you ever did see. And I liked it a lot. And there's a grandson and all this kind of stuff. And there are no guns on it. It's just these guys standing there looking all family. And people will look at that and they'll see the name. It's called Heritage Falls. And they'll just sort of walk past it. And you know what? You will have missed two good movies if you ignore those two little dumb movies that barely exist at all in the world of cinema. And Harvey Weinstein had nothing to do with either one of them.
And now we're going to dovetail into an interview with Mindy Johnson, who is the author of Ink and Paint, The Women of Walt Disney's Animation. This is an incredible coffee table book, and you'll hear a lot more about it. But really, the influence and presence of women in the animation history of Disney is an almost impossibly kept secret.
I mean, what do we hear about the 7 old men?
Yeah, the 7 old men. Well, look, there are a lot more women, and so here we're going to talk to Mindy Johnson about it right now. Mindy Johnson of Ink and Paint.
It is our enormous privilege to be speaking with Mindy Johnson, who is the author of Ink and Paint, The Women of Walt Disney's Animation, which is one of the most amazing coffee table books I have seen in a long time. This is not just a great history and a great coffee table book, but it's really a work of art in and of itself. And Mindy, this is an amazing history and such an enormous job of research. What was the genesis of this book, and what were the hurdles that you faced in researching it?
Well, thank you, Wade. It's a great joy and delight to be here with you. As far as the genesis of this book, for me personally, I had explored briefly the roles of ink and paint, but in a previous book. But like everyone else, I sort of fell under the notion that this was just simply, then it was, the artwork was moved into this department and the women traced the paintings or traced the drawings and then painted them, and it moved on to camera. You got maybe a sentence of a log line of what these women accomplished. But when it came down to it and the beginnings of the research for this volume, I was several months into it and had to call my editor quickly and say, this is a very different book. It's a much bigger story than we imagined. Which was a great delight, but also presented a number of challenges with not only trying to understand all of the different departments and what was accomplished within Ink and Paint, but to explore the roles of where women moved throughout the entire animation process. And it quickly evolved into a nearly 100-year, a century-long look at women's roles through industry, through entertainment, Hollywood history, animation history, pop culture history. It's pretty sweeping, and really couldn't be anything less than that, because it's an area that has never really been examined before in this context. So if someone had told me when I began this was what it would turn out to be, I would have laughed. But here we are.
It is an extraordinary book, and Disney, obviously, I know this from speaking to other authors, my friend Charles Solomon, who's done a number of books for Disney, that Disney supports you to the nth degree, and that their resources are fully at your disposal. But I also know that that's a little bit of a, careful what you wish for kind of a thing, because suddenly you find yourself swamped by everything imaginable, and how do you filter it all out? We've spoken to the authors of a number of Disney books recently, and it's a little bit of the same in every case, which is that it's one thing when you're digging to try to find enough archival information to support your work. But when it's all at your disposal, how do you distill it all into a story? Where did these? I mean, because there are individual stories here, and some of these amazing women. Helen Nurbevig is just such a fascinating story too. I mean, there's just so many of these individual women. How did you sort of zero in on the individual stories?
Well, to actually go back, and you brought up a wonderful point about generally having a lot of great material to go through, but in this instance, interestingly enough, it was the opposite. When I first approached the studio about this volume, they certainly opened up their resources as much as they could, but we soon quickly discovered that history, in many ways, is recorded, preserved, written about, and archived from a male perspective. And when I went in seeking material about the women and about the department, where there were volumes and boxes and ledgers and other material in specific films and many of the men, there was virtually nothing. I was essentially handed a folder with 5 pieces of paper saying, this is what we have for the ink and paint department. Because even then, people thought it was nothing more than pretty girls who traced and colored, yet nothing could be further from the truth. It was one of the most extensive departments. So thus began a pretty extraordinary odyssey of literally tracking down family members and finding many of the women who are still with us, thankfully, though their numbers are dwindling, and finding grandchildren and nieces and nephews and as many people as we could. I conducted, I think, over 120, 130 roughly interviews for this volume. So it quickly became apparent this needed to be told in as many firsthand accounts as possible. And it was about a 5-year journey of trying to literally digging through closets and under beds, finding material and cells and artwork, and family members literally, bringing boxes of material forth saying, please tell our mother's story, tell our grandmother's story. No one has done this. It was pretty powerful.
And what I particularly love is that the individual stories also serve to give you not just a history of women in animation, but a history of animation through the women. Barbara Worth Baldwin, I was reading just before I called you, the whole idea of the use of airbrushing, the team she assembled of men and women, and we don't often look at those films like Pinocchio and a lot of the older ones and really understand what role airbrushing had in giving us the look and the feel that made those films so effective. So, I mean, I learned a great deal about animation, just generally, not just the women, but the process itself as they practiced it. It's just a wonderful balancing act that you do here.
Thank you. It was a little daunting, and it took some twists and turns just to sort of get this finally laid out into this context. And again, I have to circle back to my editor, who was just brilliant to let me sort of explore and find my way with this. And it really does become the other half of the animation story. It was very apparent early on that when you start to connect the dots and examine these key women and the progression of the work that they accomplished through color and artistry and applying that to storytelling, we've only known half the story by examining what the men accomplished with pencils. It really is another layer to the artistry and refinement and evolution of animation, not only within Disney but throughout other studios. As I was researching, many of these women did move to different studios, so it was very important to include, as you progress through the chronology of the volume, to acknowledge where women had moved and progressed and what the experience was like at other studios as well. So for me, it was fascinating to kind of link together this bird's eye view of as I said, over 100 years of animation and film history that had never really been explored before.
It's such an achievement, and as the father of a daughter who just cannot get enough of her Disney films, it's nice that I can now show her this, and that I can tell her that so much of what makes these movies special to her are that there were women animating them as well. It's not just the princesses in the movies, but it's the the women behind the scenes as well. We have to mention June Foray, who was not just a great voice talent, but she also wrote before her passing. She wrote an introduction to this book for you, which is I think it's so poetic that she was able to do that. Talk a little bit about June and her contributions and your interface with her.
Oh my goodness. June literally was an institution, and there's a very sweet line that Chuck Jones is quoted saying, we're very familiar with the extraordinary voice talents of Mel Blanc, but as Chuck Jones stated of June, he said, June Foray was not the female Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc was the male June Foray. That, I think, speaks volumes to her talent and her extraordinary efforts, not only behind the microphone, but behind the scenes in terms of animation. She was a force in getting ASIFA established, the great organization behind much of where we are today with animation. She also worked tirelessly with the Motion Picture Academy to establish a great, tremendous growth and presence for animation within the film industry, but also to establish the Best Picture, Best Animated Feature Film category. We owe so much to her, and her career spanned decades. I mean, generations have grown up with her voice as a constant within so many animated forums, and yet very few people realize, this tiny, amazing, extraordinary woman is so responsible for where we are today with animation. So it was a tremendous honor when I was circling back to figure out who would logically be the best presence for the forward. June's name was right there at the top, and knowing her age and her health was challenging. We reached out, and absolutely, she and her family were delighted. And once they saw the range and volume and impact of this volume, they said, most definitely, this is important. So with her recent passing, I'm just deeply honored and humbled to have her voice, literally and figuratively, as part of this volume.
It could not be more perfect. It really couldn't. I look at every single sidebar here, and there's not one that wouldn't be a great movie or a short film in and of itself. They all have such interesting lives, and their contributions are all so valuable. Retta Scott, such an interesting person. The last line of your little sidebar here, where she says, I estimated that during that year I had drawn over 56,000 dogs for Bambi. I mean, that's an amazing artistic output and an amazing labor by any measure. And these women were working here in animation at a time when increasingly women were starting to sort of get fewer and fewer positions in the industry. After World War II, I think all over the United States, that was the movement, the women out of the workplace and men in, and yet these women continued to sort of hold on to these positions. Is it fair to say that Disney animation simply would not have been what it is? It wouldn't be what we know it as if not for the contributions of these women?
Yes, it is definitely even totally accurate to state this. In about the mid-1930s, Walt Disney begins to bring women in specifically for the purposes of expanding the artistry and range of what can be accomplished with animation. Certainly the animators were training in the human form and being able to visually convey interesting movement, but Walt recognized he needed the sensibilities of women and their artistry to, for audiences to be able to sit for an hour and a half and through an animated feature film. You have to remember, prior to Snow White, this was essentially unheard of outside of Lotte Reineker's great work in The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, which was a shadow puppetry feature-length film. But Walt recognized in his medium of hand-drawn animation there were new boundaries of artistry that were possible, and it had to push, it had to expand. There had to be pathos, there had to be emotion in order for audiences to be able to endure an hour and a half. Because many people laughed at Disney's folly, saying no one will be able to sit through anything longer than 2 reels. It'll hurt people's eyes. But Walt was convinced, and he knew the impact of color on story, going back to Flowers and Trees and The Old Mill, the early Silly Symphonies, as the women advanced the artistry through their color contributions. You have women such as Mary Weiser in the mid-1930s, as the studio was advancing their efforts in animation. She recognized that the paints that they were utilizing, which were commercially purchased, were not working. They would streak, they wouldn't adhere to the cells, they wouldn't dry. Too problematic for what they were trying to achieve. So she took it upon herself, through her and Hazel Sewell, who oversaw the department at the time. Mary went out and developed and created their own paints, specifically designed for animation and for cell application.
Wow.
No other studio had done this. And within the first year of her work, she saved the company $6,000 in white paint alone. The palettes for each of these films changed, and when you track from Flowers and Trees, utilizing about 80 commercially available colors, to within the advent of about 5 years span to production on Snow White, suddenly they're moving within the range of 1,200 colors.
Wow.
All produced and manufactured at the studio by women. Women were everywhere in the late 30s, as early as the late 30s, in editing, storytelling, research, chemistry, special effects, airbrush teams, post-production. It's a remarkable story, and far wider, far more reaching in areas than anyone ever imagined.
Yeah.
So when we look at what is accomplished, and not only going back to the late 20s even, and early 20s when Disney started, but going back to the late teens, and you have women, the earliest that we know of is Helena Smith Dayton, one of the earliest female animators in stop-motion animation, as early as 1916.
Wow.
So new discoveries being made even continually, but then women really were at the forefront through the xerography advancements in the mid-50s,
Yeah.
as well as moving into the digital age. You have so many extraordinary women at the forefront of integrating computers into animation, and again, that's all here within the book. So
and I will be at Disneyland in a couple of days, actually, with my daughter, and I was so taken also by the story of Charlotte Clark, who made the first Mickey Mouse doll, and
Yes.
I will not be at Disneyland looking at those giant vats of dolls ever again the same way. I will see her contribution there. And just to close, I think there's some wonderful quotes in here from Disney about the contributions of women. There's a pull quote on page 79. I feel the female is the influential human. They influence the world. And that leads right into Walt talking about, where he says women are the best judges of anything we turn out. And I find that to be true in my own life. My wife and my daughter have far better taste than I ever will in just about everything. So I think this book is a wonderful, wonderful contribution, and I think it revises and informs us in the history of animation in some wonderful ways. And I thank you, and on behalf of our listeners, I thank you enormously. The book is Ink and Paint: The Women of Walt Disney's Animation. We've been speaking with the author Mindy Johnson. The book has a foreword by the late June Foray, and it is just absolutely wonderful. Mindy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Wade. A complete joy.
And that was Mindy Johnson. And Tim, yes, you're right.
9 old men.
9 old men.
I wonder which 2 I killed.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry about that, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That's it for this week's show. We'll be back next week for the Halloween show, a full week before Halloween, but can't do a Halloween show on Halloween. So we will do our spooky show next week. And for now, we are
Tim Cox Show
and Wade Major.